Is it your sense, because it certainly is mine, that quite often our response to these things is perhaps out of, I don't even know if ideology is the right word, but we have an idea of what we think we ought to have, but it doesn't square up with the reality on the ground. I ask that question because the Department of Health, other health experts have said most of us have immunity to this thing now, either through exposure or via the jab. Why are we still here?
Well, I would say absolutely, and that's one of the reasons why we've made this call now for us to end the state of disaster and drop the regulations, and let's get back to trying to fix our economy, getting our jobs back, and getting our events and tourism industry back on their feet. It makes no sense to keep South Africa in the state of lockdown, which has really been one of the hardest and longest in the world, any longer. The virus is past its dangerous stage now, and it makes no sense whatsoever to keep us in the state of disaster.
Because, of course, it was always about the ability of the health system and the pressure on our hospitals, for example, to respond to the crisis.
Correct, and that was what the initial 3-week period should have done. The reality now is that if there's been no preparation that's been completed in the last 2 years, it's unlikely to be prepared for. So it makes no sense to keep it here. Also, we saw in the last wave of the virus that although it was spreading, the incidence of hospitalization and deaths were incredibly low, and therefore there was no overload whatsoever on the hospital system. So using the fact that you're worried about hospital overload is really not going to cut the mustard here in this particular debate, because as we saw from that experience, the hospitals were not overrun, and that most people got very relatively mild flu symptoms, and it was over in 3 or 4 days.
Current events, developing stories,
tough questions,
your voice making a difference.
This is Breakfast with Bongani Bingwa.